All right, welcome to The Explainer. We're going to dig into something really fascinating today. What does a manager's brain actually look like when you map it out on paper? And more importantly, what does that tell us about how we're all learning to solve really complex problems? Okay, let's just dive right in. So, let's just get right to it. Here's the big question, the central mystery, really. For years, people have been asking, are business schools accidentally creating silos instead of thinkers? In the rush to teach all these specific skills, are they actually making it harder for graduates to connect the dots? Are we building walls between ideas instead of bridges? And look, this isn't some newfangled idea. The famous management thinker Henry Mintzberg, he put it so bluntly. He said, business schools are graduating MBAs and not managers. Whoa, that suggests a huge gap between what you learn in a classroom and what you actually need in that corner office, right? The diploma might say MBA, but does the thinking really say manager? Okay, so this brings us to our first big topic. Let's call it a crisis in the classroom. We're going to look at this core debate, this widespread feeling that maybe, just maybe, something fundamental in business education is a little broken. So here's the big accusation. Basically, in a nutshell, think about it. You take a marketing class, then you take a finance class, then an HR class. Each subject, it's like it lives in its own little box, its own silo, right? But we all know that's not how the real world works. A marketing decision has huge financial consequences, and your budget, well, that impacts our operations. The big fear is that students are getting really good at understanding the individual puzzle pieces, but they're never actually learning how to put the whole puzzle together. So the question is, how on earth do you even test a theory like this? I mean, you can't just ask people. Researchers needed a way to actually see how people think, to literally draw a picture of their problem-solving process. They needed to map the mind. And the tool they landed on is the mind map. It's actually a pretty simple but an incredibly powerful technique. Basically, you just put a problem right there in the middle of a page, then you start branching out with all the related ideas, and you connect them to show how they all relate to each other. It's almost like taking an X-ray of someone's brain as they analyze a problem. And you know what? It's super easy to do. Step 1, you put your central problem right in the middle. Step 2, you just add your primary ideas branching out from that center point. And then step 3, and this is absolutely the most important part, you draw lines and arrows between all those different ideas to show how they influence each other. Okay, so now that they have their tool, the mind map, the researchers set up this absolutely fascinating experiment. You can think of it as a kind of intellectual showdown, pitting different groups against each other to see how they'd tackle the exact same, really fundamental business challenge. Yeah, they literally pitted the apprentices against the masters. So in one corner, you've got advanced business students, both undergrads and MBAs, all in their final year. And in the other corner, their very own professors. We're talking faculty from every discipline you can imagine, marketing, finance, you name it. And the task they gave everyone sounds so simple. The prompt was just, map out the key elements of a successful company. That's it. They got a blank sheet of paper with those words in the middle and were just told to go for it. Map out all the concepts, all the connections they thought were essential. A really simple prompt, but oh boy, the results were anything but. All right, so let's get into the evidence. First up, the students' siloed brain. What did their minds actually look like on paper when they took on this challenge? Well, the results were surprisingly consistent and very, very telling. So when the researchers started looking at all the student maps, a really clear pattern just jumped off the page. Their ideas were always, and I mean consistently, organized into these separate, totally unconnected clusters. It was like they'd put all their marketing thoughts in one corner and all their finance thoughts in another corner, with literally no bridges connecting them at all. And when you drill down into it, the hallmarks of these student maps are pretty striking. First, their main ideas were basically just the names of their college courses: marketing, finance, HR. It looked like a class schedule, not a business model. And they were just descriptive labels, not processes. But here's the kicker. There were almost no connections drawn between these main ideas. Okay, so that's the students. But what about the experts? How did the professors handle the exact same problem? Well, if the student map was like a set of separate boxes, the faculty map was, well, it was something else entirely. I mean, the faculty maps were just a world apart. It was night and day. Instead of those isolated clusters in the corners, their ideas formed this dense, interconnected web. You had concepts radiating out from the center, filling the whole page with lines crisscrossing everywhere, showing how everything was related to everything else. You see? They weren't just listing subjects. They were mapping a living, breathing system. And the details were so different. The experts didn't just write down marketing. No, they wrote things like market analysis, framing it as an active process. They showed dense connections, even feedback loops, to illustrate how one area is constantly affecting another. They were mapping relationships, not just listing out categories. And look, the difference wasn't just in the shape of the maps, it was in the substance too. When you actually count them up, the students, they averaged about 4 core ideas on their maps. The faculty, they came up with almost double that, averaging around 7 core concepts. Right from the start, their mental model was just so much richer, so much more detailed. But this next slide, this number is probably the most shocking finding of the entire study. Are you ready for this? 0. A big, fat 0. That was the percentage of all student maps, undergrads and MBAs, that had even one single connection between their main ideas. Not a single student drew a line connecting, say, marketing to finance. It's a stunning finding, really. All right, so let's try to connect the dots here, pun intended. What does this huge gap between how students think and how experts think really mean? What are the implications for management, for education, really for any of us trying to solve tough problems? What this research really shows us are 2 totally different ways of thinking. On one hand, you have siloed thinking. That's where you break a problem down into its separate parts and you kind of just stop there. But on the other hand, you have integrative thinking. This is all about connecting those concepts into one big holistic system, because the experts know that the real magic, the real insight, happens in the links between the components. They're not just seeing the pieces of the puzzle, they're seeing the whole picture. And this is why it all matters so much in the real world. Think about it. A real business problem never politely stays in its lane, does it? A decision to launch a new product isn't just a marketing problem. It's a finance problem, an HR problem, and an operations problem all rolled into one. The best managers, the truly effective ones, have to be integrative thinkers. It's not a choice. They have to be able to see that entire web of consequences. And this leads us to a pretty tough conclusion, doesn't it? It suggests that the very structure of business school itself, the way you move from one specialized course to the next, get a grade and forget about it, that structure might be accidentally reinforcing this siloed thinking. It's almost like the curriculum itself is a perfect mirror of those fragmented maps the students were drawing. So, this all leaves us with a final, really important question to think about. And, this isn't just about business school. This applies to any field, to all of us. So ask yourself, how connected is your knowledge? Are you just collecting facts and putting them in separate little boxes? Or are you actively out there building the bridges between them? Just how connected is the web of what you know?